Okay, here's what I want you to do. Person next to you, I want you to spend 30 seconds and describe the color blue without using colors. Describe the color blue without using colors. What? That's so too easy. Okay, we'll see if this is any more difficult. Okay, how about this? Now describe to the person next to you what water tastes like. Tastes like freedom? Frito? Okay, all right. Okay, last one. Describe the difference between left and right. No, not always, because this is my left and this is my right. Yeah, this is my left and this is my right. This is my left, this is my right.
No, that's your right and this is your left.
I mean, if I'm looking this way, it is.
No. This is your right and this is your left. Make an L.
Oh, interesting.
See, I'll show them.
Wow, that's kind of cool. Hey, there are some things that are difficult to describe, and if you took someone from the 1800s and planted them in today's world, I think it would be hard to describe COVID. Speaking of COVID and sticking mints on each other's faces with, imagine trying to describe to a random person from forever ago what COVID was. I don't want to reflect on this super weird time, but I am going to for a second. I'm going to give you 6 months of a timeline of the year 2020. And maybe this will remind us of some things, how we remember going home from school or different things. This is in 6 months. On January 2nd, so before COVID ever happened, 2020, a third state of emergency was called in New South Wales, Australia. Bushfires threatened the entire south coast of the country. 5 days later, January 7, WHO is notified of the COVID thing in China. January 20, a couple weeks later, the first COVID case in the United States is reported. 6 days later, Kobe and Gigi and other passengers died in a helicopter crash. March 11, a couple months later, WHO declares COVID a pandemic. March 24, the 2020 Olympics are postponed, and by this point, we're home from school, right? March 24-ish, we're home from school. May 2nd, I don't know if you remember this one, we were scared of murder hornets. Does anybody remember the murder hornets that were going to take over America? It was these massive, hornets that were, May 5, there's video of Ahmaud Arbery's killing that gets leaked all over social media. May 25, 20 days later, George Floyd is killed by a police officer in Minneapolis. There's sparking months of protests worldwide. May 30, SpaceX launches 2 astronauts into the International Space Station. June 28, COVID passes 10 million cases. This is 6 months of some really big headlines that don't even cover everything of just the first half of 2020. Can you imagine trying to describe what 2020 was like to a random person, let alone how your personal life was like? We saw a world changing with a global pandemic and extreme and obvious racial injustice. We saw natural fires and athletes die and athletic events postponed. We saw a war break out between Israel and Palestine, and this is all within the last couple years. And this is just like a bite-sized piece of all that happened in this 2020, 2021, COVID area. And it felt really weird to have a summer with nothing going on. Did anyone else feel that in 2020? No camps, no basketball, no sports, no social gatherings really. 2020 was just this super weird year that was really weird. For me, camp is one of the coolest parts of my summer. We have people who went to camp in the room, and it truly was the best time. Camps have always been huge for me. When I'm at camp, I don't know about you, I feel like I am the person that I was destined to be. I actually feel like my best self at camp. Does anyone relate to that a little bit? If you go to camp, maybe you'll relate to this. I had this notion in high school that all of my struggles and addictions just went away when I was at church camp. And I had the best, sin-free week of my life because I would always say this thing Satan is further away at camp and God is closer. is kind of the like what I told myself. So I don't know if this is familiar. This camp kind of thing that we do a lot in the church world is like we cry and we confess and we break chains and we say something like, God, never again. I'll never again fill in the blank. Maybe we rededicate our life and then fast forward a couple months or a couple weeks, a couple days. Maybe it's just the bus ride home and it's kind of life back to normal. And we don't love this feeling. I want to break the idea in case anyone has it. I'm not trying to convict anyone of anything or say anything bad about anybody. I'm not trying to point anybody out. There are lots of years where I've kind of and years of camp where I kind of said God, never again will I, and then it's just kind of this phase over and over and over again. In this book, I have the booklet or the notes page, at least a page of every camp I've ever been to. Every camp and conference, every retreat, it totals to about 74. That I've been to. In years of my life, I've gone to 5 camps a summer, not including other fall retreats and conferences and things like that. And what I would do every single year is I would leave camp, and in my Bible, I would leave my note page open. And I would kind of have this mantra that camp is not done. What I'm learning at camp, what I'm taking away from camp, and how I'm coming home from camp, this is a symbol that camp isn't over. Because I love the mountaintop experience of faith. I would actually say a lot of us in the church world sometimes get addicted to the mountaintops, the really great moments where we don't feel like we're really struggling that much, or we feel like we've finally figured out the problem of lust, or we've finally figured out how to do this thing, and then a couple weeks go by. This is that feeling of being just at the top of my faith is the feeling that I love. But we all know what happens to mountaintop experiences. A mountaintop implies that there's a way up and a way down. And there's this reality that when we come home from camp, we come home from fall retreat, we go back to normal, coming out of COVID. We go back to normal, and things just kind of get normal again. 2020 forced a lot of us to, slow down, clear our calendars. How's that clear calendar working out for everybody nowadays? Not so great. Sometimes we equate this idea that God is more present at camp, like I said, and Satan's less present. The reality is we leave these fun events, we leave church camp and fall retreat and these really mountaintop experiences in whatever reality, maybe it's a band camp or it's a choir or it's a theater, whatever it is. We leave these things wanting more. We want more of the relationship with the friends that we've had. We want more of the incredible cafeteria food, which at camp this summer was actually legit cafeteria food. I actually wanted more of the chicken stuff they had. You remember if you were there. If you know, you know. Anyway, but we leave camp wanting more is the reality. We want more worship. We want more time with friends. We want more time maybe in the mountains from vacation, or maybe we want more time with that person we've been talking to and texting late at night and asking to meet at the volleyball court. I don't know. There's a reality. So I was part of a training the other day, and they asked us to write down 3 things that we're going to do in the next year to care for ourselves, and all 3 of my things started with more. I said work out more, get outside more, and play more music. That was the reality. Because the reality is, in today's world, we all want more, is the reality. We all want more. There's all kinds of things that are happening, and in the world we live in, it's really easy to actually get more. This idea of more, you realize would anyone say, if I use this word, does this make sense? We live in a loud world. Does that make sense? It's everybody? Yeah, social media is loud. We get so accustomed to loud, the world that we live in. Some of us actually need things happening that are loud to fall asleep. Raise your hand if you fall asleep with the TV on. Anybody? A couple of us. I used to watch The Office as I fell asleep every single night. How many of us sleep with a fan, a loud fan noise? Yeah, see, I sleep with a fan on that's really loud. A lot of us just need loud. It's actually possible. I don't know if you thought about this. You can have your life so tweaked and so customized that it's actually possible for you to not experience quiet. It's possible for you to never have a moment of just silence. You can have your life so organized and peaked. We have infinity in our pocket. We have every piece of knowledge that's ever existed, every document that's written, and all the history, it's in our phone. There's more technology on your phone today than there was on the first rocket that landed on the moon. We have this ability to have ceaseless communication with all ends of the world at all hours of the day. Everything can come at us every minute of the day. YouTube and Netflix and Audible and Instagram and Twitter and Be Real and Spotify and all of the different things that we can spend time and more time on that constantly are sending you messages and notifications. Like my dad has a Bluetooth speaker attached to his bicycle. And he rides around our neighborhood and listens to jazz music on his motor-powered bicycle. And he claims it's not like a fitness thing. Like, he can ride his bike. He's just like, I like having the extra boost. So my dad rides 20 miles a day. So that's just who my dad is. But he has a speaker connected to it. I went to Best Buy the other day. They had a pair of sunglasses with headphones in the sunglasses that you could listen to. You could Bluetooth connect to your phone or your radio or whatever. We don't even have to be plugged into our phones to be listening to music. You can have AirPods, and you could be walking around and not be near your phone, but have music. You can have your life so tweaked and picked out, you have the ability to have no quiet. It's possible, like it's never been before throughout all of history, to completely banish the idea of quiet from your life. If you took a plane ride 30 years ago, you're on a plane. What was something that you might bring on a plane 30 years ago to occupy your time? A book. A Walkman probably wasn't allowed at the time on planes. But yeah, you'd bring a newspaper or a book. How many of us bring the newspaper or a book on a plane? Some of us still bring books. That's fine. The reality is actually a lot of planes have a literal screen in the headrest that we can play games on and different things like that. Planes have Wi-Fi's. There are cars with Wi-Fi. There's this reality that we don't prioritize rest. And rest is actually something that's really important. I want to ask just a couple questions here. How many of you still feel tired even after you sleep? Okay, how about this one? Do you feel like you never stop going? Okay, how about this one? Do you catch yourself falling asleep at times you're supposed to be awake? Some of us, yeah. How about this one? Do you ever catch yourself thinking, I really wish I could catch a break? Yeah, have you, there's this reality that we need rest. We need quiet. And so our phones, Apple develops this ability on our phones called the Do Not Disturb button. And the idea behind the Do Not Disturb button was that it'll silence all notifications. You won't get notified of if someone's texting you or calling you or Be Real goes off. You won't get notified of any of those things. Have you noticed what now is a feature on iPhones for Do Not Disturb? You can say notify anyway. Because the reality is, as people, we don't prioritize quiet. If you've got your phones on you or a Bible with you, we're going to be in Matthew 3. I want to invite you, if you've got your phone, go ahead and pull it out. Would love for you to use the Bible app. It's just a really great tool. We're going to be in Matthew 3. We're going to look at verses Matthew 3:16 and a little bit into chapter 4. So you can pull that out. I'll give you a second to get there. This is from Matthew 3:16. It says this: As soon as Jesus was baptized, he went up out of the water. At that moment, heaven was opened, and he saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove and alighting on him. And a voice from heaven said, This is my Son, whom I love. With him I am well pleased. And then Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. What a crazy way to end a story. So I want to pause for a second, though. Some of us in the room have been baptized. Super cool. If that's something that sounds interesting to you or you have more questions about that, please talk to your small group leader. When I was baptized, I actually had the flu. I remember I was at a movie theater the night before, and I just remember sitting underneath a payphone out in the lobby. I know, payphones in the mall. Crazy idea. I'm not that old, but it's a reality. I was sitting underneath one, and I just started going man, I do not feel good. And then I threw up all night, and I showed up to church, and I'm the baptism pool was at the top of this thing, and you had to walk from the basement all the way up these stairs, and so I and then I walk up the stairs, and they dunk me, and then I come back down, and I throw up, and then get this, after church, they were going to have a party for me for getting baptized. They were going to have cake, and they have a meal, and I went home and just threw up some more. That was my baptism. When Jesus was baptized, the freaking sky opened, and God appears and said, I'm so proud of you. I love you. And a little piece of me feels like I didn't get the full experience when I was like sick and decrepit, like wanting, like a little piece of me just, I don't know. I know Jesus is like Jesus and all, but it just feels like it should have been a cooler thing. Anyway, so this is the reality, this story, and then it says that immediately Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. For 40 days, he fasted and was hungry. It's always interesting to me that it says that he fasted and was hungry. Does that need to be said? Like, of course, he fasted and he was hungry. So I've always read this story where Jesus is taken into the wilderness and is going to be tempted. I've always read this as something where Jesus is like this less than figure person in this story who is basically like getting beat up and tortured this whole entire week, and then somehow through this incredible power, like rallies enough like muster and gumption to defeat Satan. And it's this like last minute kind of victory that Jesus, I imagine Jesus like sitting like curled up in a ball, like being like, it's not real, this isn't real, like literally like in pain and being tortured in the wilderness. But I don't think that this is the reality. This wilderness that we picture is where a lot of us spend time in reality. This like kind of just feeling like life is a torturous thing. Jesus went to the wilderness to be with the Spirit. And I always thought this was a scary place. The reality is that I'm going to end the sentence actually at Jesus went to the wilderness to be. It was a place. The wilderness was a place where Jesus went to be. It wasn't something that he was going to go be like tortured and beat up and all these things. It was actually a place where Jesus spent some intentional time in quiet and in rest and in fasting and strengthening with his Father so that he could deal with what was going to come from Satan. To assume that the wilderness is a bad thing or that Jesus didn't like it, a lot of verses wouldn't make sense. If Jesus was going to a quiet space, a private space to be alone, a lot of verses in the New Testament wouldn't really make sense if that was the case. Like, what do you do with passages like Mark 1:35 that says, rising very early in the morning, he departed and went out to a desolate place, and there he prayed. There's nothing that implies that wilderness was this just awful place to be. In the original language, desolate means kind of the same thing. Wilderness, it's the same word, wilderness and desolate, just this quiet place where he prayed. He would spend time in prayer. He would strengthen himself in the wilderness. And oh, by the way, Jesus, after really busy days and days of dealing with lots of people, he would actually go to a place of wilderness, a desolate place, a quiet place, and spend time with his Father. Oh, after days where Jesus performed tons of miracles, and healed people and brought people to a fullness of knowing who Jesus is, he would find rest, wilderness, quiet. This was a place where Jesus could go. He realized that the time he spent with Jesus, the time he spent with God was really important. When he started feeling like life was just getting hectic and crazy, he said, you know what I need is just quiet, rest. He did this often. The idea is that it's not this bad thing, this spending time in rest. A lot of us, I feel like there's a reality in my own life, and I don't know if you maybe relate to this, that there was a period of my life that I didn't really want to be bored anymore. I was just tired of not having anything to do. But this idea of slowing in life and stopping and resting is important. Jesus was led to the wilderness because this is where he was going to be tempted. Jesus went to the wilderness to fill his tank to be able to handle what was coming his way. And it's only possible to withstand for just what he was going to do with this 40 days of strengthening his faith. This wilderness wasn't torture, but it was actually tactics. It was the place where Jesus went to be. So it goes on in Matthew 4. We're in Matthew 4 now, verses 3 through 11, if you've got it. It says this, the tempter came to him and said, this is talking about Satan, the tempter came to him and said, if you are the Son of God, tell these stones to become bread. And Jesus answered him, well, it's written, man shall not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes out of the mouth of God. So then the devil took him to the holy city and had him stand on the highest point in the temple. Had him look over and he said, if you're the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it's actually written, Jesus, he will command his angels concerning you. They'll lift you up into their hands so that you will not strike your foot against a stone. Jesus answers him in this moment and says, well, it's also written, if you're going to quote Scripture, it's also written, don't put the Lord your God to test. So again, the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all of the kingdoms of the world and their splendor and how incredible. It's this kind of Simba moment, right? And he says, all of this I will give to you, says Satan, if you just simply bow down and worship me. Jesus said to him, away from me, Satan, for it's written, worship the Lord God and serve him only. So then the devil left him and the angels came and attended to him. I love this story of Jesus because Jesus is kind of like it's giving main character. If Jesus is like main character, if he wasn't, right? Because it's like literally like his book. But Jesus is going like, oh, you want to quote scripture at me? Like, well, guess what? I've got better scripture, not better, but like I've got the right use of it to like come back at you with. Jesus, like Satan's like, hey, all you need to do is just do something really simple, just bow down and worship me. And Jesus is like, no. He's like, I feel this kind of sense of sassiness almost in Jesus being like, yeah, exactly, so yeah, Satan. Jesus found this quiet and meditated on Scripture and prayed with his Father. And if we want to bring this back to 2023 today, here we are in a world that rejects this posture of just resting and preparing and being quiet and spending time with God. Like I said, we can have our lives so tweaked and filled up that we just forget to have quiet, and when we get it, it's like we just can't get enough, but we're like going to leave it because we can maybe find some time at camp to spend quiet time. And then we come back to the real world and we get sad and we get angry and we get depressed and we get mad and we get defeated and we get anxious. And when our camp high, we come down from this, or when life starts to come at us really hard, life is more than just super exciting moments. I said it's possible to never have quiet. And maybe you relate to that and you feel like, yeah, my world is really loud right now. There's constantly stuff happening. I'm overwhelmed, I'm tired, I'm anxious. For some reason, we remember to put our phones in airplane mode way more often than we do ourselves. We don't have a rhythm of quieting ourselves. This is natural. We do this. Maybe we've heard the song or the phrase like we're always working for the weekend, right? Like our natural wiring as humans is to work really, really, really hard so we can get to the rest. That's not the way that God designed us. A harsh reality in this quote I want to share with you. Check this out. It says, the terror of stopping, the terror of rest, reveals the true depth of your emptiness. Resting and stopping might reveal some things in your life with how busy you are, with how anxious you are, really with how tired you are of running constantly. Stopping might require you to see some things. You might finally realize how broken you are or how empty you are, how you never processed this trauma from a couple years ago. You may never realize how much you need rest until you just stop for a moment of time. Jesus went to the wilderness to find quiet. Jesus went to this quiet place, this secret place, often to be with his Father, to be with God, to find God. He knew that he needed more of God. And if this is the posture of Jesus, it should so too be with us. Part of our prayer for you as Heartland and as Movement is that you'll realize that no matter what point and season you're at in your life, there's a reality that you need more God. We can feel confident in saying that because there's no fulfillment, there's no truth you're going to find like the one that Jesus offers you. We need time with God. We need rest. If we want to grow in our relationship with Jesus, if we want to grow in our faith, if we want to be closer to Jesus, we have to spend time in quiet, in rest, and just reflecting on the goodness of Jesus. Wilderness is not this scary place. It's somewhere we should go to like find rest and to prepare. And tonight I want to give you an opportunity to just spend a couple minutes and just kind of assess like where's your head at? And maybe you'll realize like I really need rest. Maybe you'll realize I don't really know like how to rest. I don't know how to spend time with God. Like sitting in silence and just thinking about God feels awkward. I want to invite you into a practice next week. We're going to answer that question, like, how do I rest in the goodness of God? We're going to answer that question with Tom Bronner, who's a guy, he's been on staff here forever, and we're really excited for the message next week because we want to help you understand, like, there's a reality that our culture is just bad at rest. Anyone else agree with that? Our culture is just bad at rest. We want to invite you into a practice of being able to rest in the goodness of who God is. So my question for you, do you need rest? We have just a really quick survey that we're going to help you do that tonight. What I want you to do, over here on the speaker, you'll find there's these little sheets, look like this, and there's pens. And this is just 10 questions that there's a 0 through 4 kind of ranking. You'll total up, and then it's called the Perceived Stress Test. It's like a national tool. It's just to help you realize, like, maybe I'm pretty stressed and I didn't even know it. Maybe I need rest more than I realized. And there's a question at the bottom, what is your current stress level according to the test? Just say about the rest you need. Just spend some intentional time, 10 minutes. I want everyone to grab a sheet, and I want you to just find any spot out in the atrium, just anywhere. Fill this out, and then you can head your small groups from there.